Childhood is an important time to get acquainted with cinema. It can really help to shape us for the rest of our lives. And relatability can be key. While many of us remember watching The Goonies and picturing ourselves going on an adventure to find One-Eyed Willie's treasure, there's another film that us horror kids remember even better. One that featured Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman, and a slew of other classic horror monsters, yet still wrapped in kid-friendly packaging. Fred Dekker's The Monster Squad. Hey friends, Tyler Nichols with JoBlo here, and I hope you're ready to look at one of the greatest films of our childhoods. We've got 3 different looks at the movie for you. First, we'll be looking at whether or not the film stands the test of time. Spoiler alert, it does. Then we'll be figuring out how it came to be with some behind the scenes. And finally, we're just taking a good old-fashioned look at what makes it one of the best horror movies out there. I know I'm personally a massive fan of this film and can't think of the classic Wolfman without thinking,
Wolfman's got Nards!
Come on, I know I'm not alone with that. So let's take a look back at the horror version of The Goonies with The Monster Squad.
Ooh, look at that big scary monster! Ooh!
80s nostalgia has been in vogue for almost as long as the 80s decade itself lasted. That's not a bad thing by any means. Some really cool stuff has come out of that craze, like Stranger Things, a ton of great horror movies, and even some book and video game throwbacks. Speaking of Stranger Things, I think it's safe to say that we wouldn't have that ratings powerhouse without a little movie from 1987 called The Monster Squad. Not Monster Squad, the 1976 TV series about wax figures of monsters that come to life to fight bad guys, although the guest stars they pulled on that are pretty fun. No, I'm talking about The Monster Squad. A group of horror-obsessed kids that team up and battle monsters to save their small town and the world. Many of us grew up with this gem, but nearly 40 years later, does it stand the test of time?
He's gonna kill your son!
2 ways to kill a werewolf.
Silver bullet?
And?
That's it. Shoot him with the silver bullet.
Nope, sorry, Rudy.
Okay, so what's the other way?
We're the Monster Squad.
The Monster Squad is the second part of what I refer to the double Dekker, with the first one being Night of the Creeps. Sure, Fred Dekker almost wrote and directed RoboCop 3, but these 2 movies are actually good. While it was already more than an idea in his head, there is an amazing Easter egg in Night of the Creeps when one of the lead characters is in a bathroom stall and on the wall next to him is written, "Go Monster Squad." What would have been even better would have been a throwaway line about anything from the movie. But alas, we just have a similar line read and scene about dead guys do not get up and walk away by themselves.
Corpses that have been dead for 27 years do not get up and walk away by themselves.
Followed by showing a dead guy getting up and walking away. The movie was released on August 14th, 1987, and was an absolute bomb. It had a budget of $14 million and made less than $4 at the box office. It has since become quite the cult film with more popularity than it could have ever hoped for in the late 80s. The film has a fun cast that includes Andre Gower, Ashley Bank, Robbie Kiger, Ryan Lambert, Brent Chalem, and Michael Faustino as the main Monster Squad. The supporting cast of adults and monsters includes genre favorites Tom Noonan and Stephen Mocht, as well as Duncan Regier, John Grise, and Stephen Shaw. The script was co-written by 80s wonderkin Shane Black, and the special effects were handled by the Stan Winston Studio. They were tasked with bringing all these classic monsters together, but had to make them different though. Frankenstein's monster couldn't look like the Boris Karloff iteration, the Wolfman wouldn't look like Lon Chaney, etc. Basically, nothing could look like anything from the Universal Jack Pierce days. Even the stand-in for the creature from the Black Lagoon was simply titled Gilman and looked different enough. While there had been a fair amount of Dracula, Frankenstein, and werewolf movies through the decades, we hadn't seen them all on screen like this since House of Dracula or the Abbott and Costello films of the late 1940s. Although it's been shared before, this is absolutely one of the first examples of an Avengers-like shared universe some 65 years before the Avengers. It's also very frustrating that Marvel showed us how to do it right in modern movie making, and it was so monumentally screwed up in the proposed Dark Universe. The movie runs in at under 90 minutes and has no dragging parts. It opens 100 years in the past, or 100 years before 1987 anyway, where Van Helsing and a few other determined heroes corner Dracula and his creature friends in order to rid the world of his menace. This scene was written as a ridiculous action set piece involving zeppelins and hundreds of men on horseback storming Dracula's castle. Considering how badly the movie bombed, the amount of money that would have taken could have bankrupted the production company. Van Helsing is able to banish Dracula and his monster cronies into a portal, but not permanently. We then get transported to modern times, or at least modern for the movie, and we get to meet the titular Monster Squad. We get Rudy, Horace, Sean, and Patrick as they navigate life in school. There's also the younger sister Phoebe, who they call Phoebe the Phoebe. The face she makes is exactly how my daughter looks when her brother makes fun of her, and it breaks my heart a little. Dracula gets Frankenstein's monster out of a plane, and a lunatic claiming to be a werewolf wants to get locked up but is shot instead.
Right on.
Across town, Sean's cop dad is investigating a break-in and theft at the museum where the mummy walked away. The supposed dead guy turns into the werewolf he warned them about and kills the ambulance driver. We then get the other monster squad together, with Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy, the Gillman, and Frankenstein's monster. Sean starts to worry about monsters being real after hearing about all the stuff that had happened with his dad the previous night, and decides that they're the ones that have to do something about it. He has Van Helsing's diary, but they can't read it because it's all in German. Dracula sends, look, I'm not saying Frankenstein's monster 10 more times here, so he's the monster now. So he sends the monster after the diary, and the kids have their scary German neighbor translate it. The monster fails spectacularly and ends up befriending the group while scary German guy, who is indeed bitchin', explains the process that can either seal evil away forever or allow them to rule. Dracula finds the amulet, and the kids go into full training montage to prepare and stop him. They collect supplies and make a game plan to destroy the monsters once and for all. Dracula is prepping too and turns a few girls into his vampire brides. Half the team goes to the house with the amulet, while the other two find the virgin they need to read the incantation. The monster is crushed when the ceiling collapses, and we find out that Wolfman indeed do have Nards.
Wolfman's got Nards.
They flee from the Count, his brides, and the Wolfman before meeting up with everyone else, including scary German guy who is on the team now too. They dispose of the mummy and head for the town church to complete the ritual while Dracula blows up the treehouse with dynamite, as well as Sean's dad's partner. The monsters and the squad converge at the church at the same time to sort out good versus evil. Sean's dad is there too, and the battle begins. Rudy takes out the vampire brides while Sean and his dad go after Dracula and blow up the Wolfman, who of course puts himself back together. Rudy, a certified badass at this point after staking the brides and unraveling the mummy, shoots the werewolf with a silver bullet. Horace kills the Gillman and gets some respect finally, but unfortunately the virgin they found is anything but.
Well, Steve, but he doesn't count. Doesn't count.
Phoebe steps in and recites it perfectly to open the portal after the monster stands up to Dracula and throws him on a spiked gate. Dracula tries to take Sean into the portal with him, but is staked for good this time, and Van Helsing pulls him into the portal himself to seal the deal. Squad 1, Monster 0. Well, we've talked about things like clothes and cars and the vernacular of the era, and sure, that's all here. One that I want to touch on is the very club or squad that is the centerpiece of the movie. The parents let the kids out whenever they want for an indeterminate amount of time, and while that itself is a relic of the past, I'm talking more about going out and doing something. If this was taking place in 2023, these kids wouldn't be out playing together. They would more than likely be playing on the ever-coveted devices, smartphones, tablets, and any number of computer and video game systems. Video game systems, and sure, tire handheld electronics were around 30 and almost 40 years ago, but there weren't as many options and it wasn't as big of a thing as it is now. I was a big video game kid, growing up at the peak of the NES, but also I went out daily to play basketball or hang out with buddies. The other one that stands out is near and dear to my heart. Sean and his dad discussed going to the 12th iteration of a slasher series called Groundhog's Day. This alone is incredible as it's poking fun of the decade's obsession with slasher killers, and we need a Groundhog series. When they end up watching it together, it's via a drive-in. Well, it's a really cool matte painting of a drive-in, but they're watching it from their roof. Drive-ins hit their peak in popularity in the 50s and 60s, but still had some pull in the 80s. While they exist in some fashion today, their numbers have dwindled and their popularity isn't as mainstream as it once was. Another cool part of this is Dekker's previous movie, Night of the Creeps, had some cool 1950s flashbacks and had scenes that could have been taken out of a movie in that era. File this under nearly everything. This movie rules, and it fits so much charm into its rather short runtime. Rather than go over everything line by line of what works, we'll single out just a few.
He had to wear pants because those movies were made in the 40s. He had to wear them so you wouldn't see his wolf dork.
The performances, yeah, even the kids, all stand out and never get into that awful, cringe-worthy zone. They all get great lines too, from Fat Kid turning into a confident Horace after killing the Gillman.
Hey, Fat Kid. Good job.
My name is Horace.
To Phoebe being the most brave at times and calling them chicken shits.
Come on, don't be chicken shit.
And Rudy protecting them and saying, I'm a part of the club, ain't I?
Where you going, Rudy?
I'm
in the goddamn club, aren't I?
And that's just with the kids. With the exception of Sean's mom, who isn't really in enough to make an impact, everyone else has great moments, lines, and character growth. John Grise, as the Wolfman, is a single-minded killer that takes his orders from Dracula. But in his human form, he wants to die, but also help the other humans of the town get ahead of what's coming.
No doubt. No doubt in my mind.
Tom Noonan kills it as Frankenstein's monster, both with his nonverbal acting Don't tell me you don't cry every time he gets sucked into the portal, and with his few lines of dialogue. Sean's dad is a good cop, but also works with his son instead of denying or just telling him to stay out of things. Finally, there's Dracula. Ever since I saw the horror of Dracula, I've been on Team Christopher Lee as the Count, but Duncan Regehr, kills it here. Granted, he didn't have the amount of screen appearances as Lugosi or Lee as Old Vlad, but he makes it count here. Sorry, that one was actually unintentional. The other thing that holds up remarkably well here are the special effects. Sure, practical effects always tend to stand the test of time, but the ones here are particularly stellar. The creature makeup and effects had to skirt the line of not being too similar to Jack Pierce and the Universal classics, but they are their own thing and they are absolutely wonderful. From the not too intensive work in Dracula and His Brides, to the full-body changes of the Wolfman and legally distinct non-copyright infringing monster from an adjacent pond, they all look great. Then you have the other effects like the mummy unraveling, the Wolfman changing and blowing up, and even Dracula in a state of mid-change from bat to man when he is shot out of the sky. While it's not quite as amazing as American Werewolf in London, it's still pretty damn good. When looking at it with a fan's eye, nothing. There's nothing here that doesn't hold up. It's a movie that is firmly stuck in its time while also being timeless. Looking at it through a critical lens only finds a few kinks in the armor. With a runtime of 82 minutes, it doesn't really have a lot of time to develop its characters or their stories to the fullest extent. The divorce situation with Sean's parents is brought up but never resolved. There isn't any background on the villains besides Dracula, and even that is a basic outline of vampire bad, Van Helsing good. While this doesn't change the level of enjoyment that the film has, it makes the plot paper thin and still tries to meander a bit. This also leads to the other slight drawback, and that's what we needed more. More monsters, more squad, and more movie in general. There was never a sequel, remake, or TV show. An idea like this today is getting a limited 8-episode series on Hulu or the full 5-season arc on Netflix a la Stranger Things. Monster Squad stands the test of time like a fine aged wine. It's something that plays homage to horror of the past and puts kids in the hero role without sacrificing the enjoyment for adults. It's a case of the movie being enjoyable today for all the reasons that probably led it to being a massive flop at the time of its release. It's a movie to watch alone, with friends, and is a wonderful gateway horror for younger audiences. It's almost a sequel to the Universal set 40 years after they came out, and is still great after nearly 40 years after its own release. We are all on the Monster Squad.
We're the Monster Squad.
What do you get when you put together Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman, the Gill-Man, the Mummy, and a bunch of outcast kids living in the glorious late 80s? The Monster Squad, of course. Surprisingly to some, back in the day, the Monster Squad was a massive flop and did absolutely terrible in theaters. However, those lucky enough to see it on the big screen loved it. I cannot stop talking about this charming and surprisingly adult horror, but it seems that much like the film's protagonists, no one was listening to them.
How rude.
Through the years, the film found its way to video stores, cable, and eventually into the hearts of so many fans. So join us as we travel back to the 80s and dive into what the f*** happened to this horror movie. So, how bad of a flop was it? Well, really bad. The film was made with a budget of $12 million US. Then add marketing and all extras it cost to get a film to theaters back then, and you end up with a fairly high cost for a movie. Well, not horribly high of a budget. It's still a lot for a PG-13 film, which had an odd marketing campaign. But more on that later. With this cost in mind, the box office total of $3.8 million US is indeed the marking of a flop. The film did not even make a third of its initial budget back in its theatrical run. Now, how does this happen? In the case of this movie, it's a multiple layered situation that caused the movie to flop. First of all was the rating, which was a PG-13 and 15 in the UK, when most people would have expected a PG, as it seems to be a kids' film. The trailer played on the success of Ghostbusters, with a line saying, You know who to call when you have ghosts, but who do you call when you have monsters? And included just about everything from the movie in it. Possibly, it showed too much. Possibly, it showed the wrong things. Perhaps, it should not have connected so directly with Ghostbusters, which was more of a comedy for adults. Who knows for sure? But while the trailer is entertaining,
Wolfman's got Nards.
it's possible that it didn't exactly lead to the right people wanting to see the movie. Then there was the rest of the marketing. Those posters, besides the main one, those character posters that were released back in 1987, designed as wanted posters for each of the monsters. They were just so off, like way off from what the film was all about. They were made to be punny and funny, but they came off like they missed the mark and were trying to sell something much more adult than the product at hand. The fact that the Dracula used on them was not even actor Duncan Regehr was another massive mistake, as he's the only actor whose face is visible in the film for most of his appearances. These posters are now prized possession of Monster Squad collectors, but back then, they did nothing to help sell tickets. Now, another massive misfire with the Monster Squad was its release date. Released on August 14, 1987, one would think it would have been the perfect release date for an adventure film for kids with fun monsters. Catch the end of the summer feeling where kids want to do as much as they can before they go back to school. And catch the pre-Halloween feel, giving the perfect timing to release licensed costumes in time for the big day. Except, it didn't work out that way, and the potential for costumes and collectibles was killed early. See, the film came out 2 weeks after one of the year's biggest horror hits, The Lost Boys. Well, The Lost Boys was rated R. It had the hearts of teens and young adults right out the gate, with a cast to die for at the time and a soundtrack that is still connected to summer fun to this day. Was it a gamble to come out against The Lost Boys? Yes. Could it have paid off? Perhaps. But it did not. Also competing for the box office that weekend was The Living Daylights, a James Bond film and thus an automatic hit. You also had flicks like Stakeout, an Emilio Estevez buddy cop film, La Bamba, about Richie Valens, which was also basically an assured hit, RoboCop, Masters of the Universe, Summer School, and No Way Out, just to name the top 10 at the box office that week. Now, would the Monster Squad have fared better on a different weekend? Maybe closer to Halloween? Maybe during a spring holiday? Or perhaps with a lower or higher rating? Or maybe a completely different trailer and marketing? What we do know is that while it flopped back in 1987, it is now a bona fide cult hit with a large following. One that would impress any filmmaker if they saw it for their own film, especially for a film that only ran in theaters for 2 weeks. Where did this now cult film come from? Who are the people behind it? Well, massive talent is behind it, that's for sure. Written by Shane Black and Fred Dekker, with Dekker directing. The film started off as a script by Black that was extremely long and was shortened with the help of Dekker. The script itself started life back in 1985 and eventually was shot the next year. The film got its green light while Dekker was filming another now cult film, Night of the Creeps. For fans of genre films, neither of these names are exactly mysteries now. Before the Monster Squad, Shane Black had written Lethal Weapon, but it wasn't out or a hit yet while they were working getting the Monster Squad off the ground. Since then, he's been writing hits, including more Lethal Weapons, The Last Boy Scout, Last Action Hero, The Long Kiss Goodnight, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Iron Man 3, The Nice Guys, and The Predator. The man is no stranger to hits, and the Monster Squad has his charm and sharp dialogue all over it. Fred Dekker, for his part, had directed one short film and was filming Night of the Creeps when the Monster Squad was approved. Since then, he has directed a Tales from the Crypt episode in its original run, RoboCop 3, and another short film. He has, however, written more films and television, including a few short films, some good old Godzilla material, House and House 2, Night of the Creeps, If Looks Could Kill, Ricochet, and The Predator. Like Black, it's not that large of a list, but it's quality material in general, with a few hiccups here and there. Now, some would say that the cast is where it's at here, and they wouldn't be entirely wrong. While the writing and directing are great, the cast had to be on point to deliver those now iconic lines.
My name is Horace.
And to be the perfect group of outcast kids teaming up to battle evil. So who are these kids? Well, our lead is Sean, and he is played by Andre Gower, who is a well-established kid actor with lots of television credits pre-Squad, including Days of Our Lives, The Young and the Restless, Baby Makes Five, St. Elsewhere, The A-Team, Knight Rider, Night Court, Father and Son, and a bunch more. He He's been on screen most of his life, and still is to this day. Although things have slowed down for him a bit, that slower period gave him time to direct the most complete documentary about the Monster Squad, called Wolfman's Got Nards. A must-see for any Monster Squad fan, and even for those who aren't, but are trying to understand why it's so popular now. Another fan favorite from the film is Ryan Lambert as Rudy. Ryan is featured extensively in the documentary Andre made. In the film, Ryan plays the cool older kid. He's the 15-year-old who wears a leather jacket, smokes, and still somehow wants to join the Monster Squad, with a bunch of 12-year-olds and a 5-year-old. Why does Rudy want to join them? There is something to be said about the appeal of the outcast, and the fact that he was probably an outcast himself. As for Lambert, his work also started before the film, with credits on TV shows like Sidekicks, The Magical World of Disney, Silver Spoons, Kids Incorporated, and Nothing is Easy. He was a busy teen with a heartthrob status to maintain. Playing another central character in the film, and appearing in the doc, is Ashley Bank, who plays Phoebe, Sean's little sister who tags along, annoys the squad, makes friends with the creature, and eventually saves the day with perfectly pronounced German. Kid actress Bank had to pass on a part in Fatal Attraction to be in this, and she still considers the Monster Squad the better choice. She was able to surround herself by kids, play in the film that she could actually watch, and had fun doing so. Now, we could go over everyone else involved in the cast and be here all day, so let's round out the rest of the cast and important people. Playing the monsters are Duncan Regehr as Dracula, Tom Noonan as the Creature, Carl Thibault as the Wolfman, Tom Woodruff Jr. as the Gillman, Michael Reed McKay as the Mummy. These guys turn in great performances, and supported by effects by Stan Winston and his crew. And if you don't know Winston, well, get to watching more horror. With all these talented people involved, and a clear passion for the film from them and from the fans, it's no surprise this initial flop has found its audience. One that is passionate about it and can be seen at any given horror convention and online, buying up all the merchandise and artwork they can and discussing the film with just about everyone. Here's the main question here. Why has the Monster Squad had such staying power? Well, part of it is nostalgia, and part of it is how it represents childhood, children, and their lives, as actual living humans with emotions and dreams and lives that are their own within their limitations. There's something special about how these kid characters are written that gives them more than just the presence of a shell of a kid. Here, these kids are you and me, and your cousins and my siblings. Any kid growing up in the 80s can identify with them, and those growing up now can do so as well. This gives the film a timeless quality. A bit like a Spielberg family film, but better, with monsters. This is the film that monster kids everywhere connect with for this reason and many others. The film is about them, about being outcasts, about dreaming of being more, about friendship, about family, and about adventure. What the Monster Squad did well was setting itself up in middle-class families with people who have issues, like Sean's parents going to marriage counseling, like Horace being bullied at school, like Patrick's sister who doesn't get a name of her own and gets slut-shamed. It gave characters like so many here with personalities, quirks, and real lives. Well, the comparison to the Goonies would be easy. Director Dekker is not a fan of it. So keeping that in mind, The Monster Squad is a Spielbergian adventure film for kids, one that got a PG-13 rating which hurt it as well as an unlucky release against some giant films at a time where some parents were hesitant to bring their kids to a random movie they did not understand the marketing for very well. The film won its audience on home video and cable, then kind of disappeared for years until it finally got a DVD release in 2007. It has since been released, been on a tour with cast and attendance, 17 cities in 17 days, oof, has countless fans, a documentary, art that it inspired in gallery exhibits, and so much more. This is how a cult film is made, by its fans pushing it and bringing it more people who in turn become fans and do the same.
If you're a horror fan over a certain age, chances are you're already very familiar with Fred Dekker's 1987 film, The Monster Squad. Maybe you grew up watching it, maybe you caught up with it later. Either way, most of us older fans have seen it by now. But there are generations behind us who haven't even been told about this awesome movie yet. The proof is right here in the documentary, Wolfman's Got Nards.
How many of you had never seen Monster Squad before tonight? You're welcome.
So this video is primarily for you younger fans out there who need to know about The Monster Squad, which is the best horror movie you never saw. In 1987, moviegoers were introduced to the brilliance of Shane Black's writing with the March release of the buddy cop classic Lethal Weapon. But a little later in the year, another Shane Black project came and went without many people noticing. The project? The Monster Squad, which Black wrote with director Fred Dekker. Dekker had the initial idea for the Monster Squad when he was preparing to go into production on his feature directorial debut, the 1986 release, Night of the Creeps. It was an idea inspired by his love both of classic comedies and the Universal monsters. He enjoyed when those worlds collided in films like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein and wanted to do something along those lines when he pitched the Monster Squad to his college friend Black as something they could write together, and he referred to the concept as The Little Rascals Meet the Universal Monsters. The story Black and Dekker crafted together features several of the famous monsters Universal thrilled the world with in the 30s through the 50s, dropping them into the 1980s America. Count Dracula, played in the film by Duncan Regehr, has come to America in search of an amulet that is said to be made of concentrated good, which by its very existence helps keep evil from taking over the world. But once every 100 years, this indestructible amulet becomes vulnerable, and if it's destroyed, the creatures of the night will take control of the planet. That idea sounds really good to Dracula, and he's recruited a mummy, a wolfman, a gillman, Frankenstein's monster, and 3 vampires' brides to assist him in his search and destroy the amulet mission. The only thing standing in the way of these monsters is a group of young kids who have formed a monster club, soon to be known as the Monster Squad. That's Andre Gower as club leader Sean Crenshaw, Robbie Kiger as his right-hand man Patrick, Brent Chalem as the bullied Horace, Michael Faustino as little Eugene, who is usually accompanied by his dog Pete, and Ryan Lambert as the newly inducted Rudy, a slightly older badass who stands up to bullies and is rumored to have killed his dad. He's the coolest kid to ever pair a leather jacket, fingerless gloves with penny loafers. Sean's little sister Phoebe, played by Ashley Bank, is always hanging out with the club members as well, but they're reluctant to let her into their treehouse headquarters simply because she's a girl. They know a lot about these monsters that have invaded their town, and thanks to the fact that Sean has acquired the journal of the legendary monster hunter Abraham Van Helsing, they also have all the information they need on the amulet and how to thwart Dracula's plan. Problem is, the journal was written in German, a language none of them know, so they have to seek the help of a local they've been calling Scary German Guy, played by Leonardo Cimino, and hope he's not the creep they suspected him to be. Since Sean and Phoebe's dad Dell, played by Stephen Mack,
show's over,
is a local police detective, he also gets mixed up in the monster action while investigating the very strange things occurring in their town. As the climactic showdown approaches, the squad also seeks the assistance of Patrick's older sister, played by Lisa Fuller. If the part about an amulet made of concentrated good sounds silly to you, don't worry about that too much. The amulet stuff barely matters, it's just what Alfred Hitchcock would refer to as the MacGuffin. The movie is really about how much fun it is to watch these kid heroes interact with each other and deal with the monster threat, and to see very cool versions of famous monsters running around in 1980s America. Black wrote most of the first draft of the script by himself while Night of the Creeps was in production. The way he and Dekker approached the writing of the script was to write new material on their own and rewrite each other's work. They only wrote a single scene, one in which the Monster Squad is approaching the crumbling old mansion where the amulet has been hidden, while they were together in the same room. Dekker has said that the scope of the first draft was too large, using Van Helsing's 19th century assault on Dracula's castle at the beginning of the movie was an example of how that draft would have been way too expensive to shoot. According to Dekker, Black's vision of that sequence involved Van Helsing riding in on a zeppelin that was equipped with machine guns and taking on 40 vampire brides on horseback. Through the rewriting process, they were able to scale it down to something that could be made for a budget that was reportedly around $12 million. He got the script into the hands of Jonathan A. Zimbert, who worked for director Peter Hyams. Hyams was told he could help the project get made by putting his name on it, so he took an executive producer credit on the Monster Squad while Zimbert was the main producer. With the backing of Zimbert and Hyams, along with Taft Entertainment Pictures and Keith Barish Productions, the Monster Squad began filming in late '86, just weeks after Night of the Creeps reached a small amount of theaters. The logical home for the Monster Squad would have been Universal Pictures, thus allowing the film to be an official entry in the Universal Monsters franchise, a true follow-up to their classic films. The project was pitched to them, but they passed. Since they weren't interested, the special effects crew led by Stan Winston were tasked with giving the monsters redesigns that would keep the film from infringing upon Universal's copyrights. They did a great job with this, creating their own unique takes on the monsters, but keeping them recognizable at the same time. These designs would have been perfect for the characters even if the movie was an official Universal movie. The film didn't run into any trouble with Universal, but the production didn't go entirely smoothly. In fact, Dekker has said that he was in danger of being fired from his own movie after the first week of filming. That's because he and Hyams didn't see eye to eye on all of the creative decisions. Hyams didn't just stamp his name on the Monster Squad and let Dekker go off and do his own thing. He was heavily involved throughout the entire production, taking on what he described as a kind of godfather position. He wrote the text crawl that the movie starts with, did some second unit directing, and disagreed with some of Dekker's directing choices. Dekker has said that Hyams demanded he shoot what Dekker described as a boring master and boring coverage for every scene, and to keep the executive producer/godfather satisfied, he started doing so. The director would later come to understand why Hyams was so hands-on, since he was an established pro who had agreed to put his name on this movie from a 27-year-old fledgling director and wanted to make sure it would turn out well. Dekker has also said that Hyams came to trust him more as filming went on. TriStar Pictures released The Monster Squad on August 14th, 1987, 1 week shy of the one-year anniversary of their underwhelming release of Night of the Creeps. And The Monster Squad wasn't the hit it deserved to be either. Its box office haul came in just under $4 million, so it didn't even make back 1/3 of its budget. And part of its failure was due to the fact that it was overshadowed by The Lost Boys, which had been released just 2 weeks earlier. The Monster Squad would start developing a cult following very soon, but many of its fans didn't discover it until it was available to rent on home video or airing on cable. The film's cult following continued to grow over the decades, but it was so under the radar that Dekker and his cast weren't fully aware of it until some of them were invited on an Alamo Drafthouse screening in 2006. Dekker has even said he had no clue people liked his movie until that screening 19 years later after the film's release. After that screening, Lionsgate took on the challenge of meeting fan demand for a DVD release of The Monster Squad, and they did a hell of a job with it, delivering a 2-disc special edition that's packed with bonus features, including a feature-length documentary with 2 audio commentaries. That 2007 DVD release not only won awards, it was also the highest-selling catalog title for Lionsgate that year. Now, the size of the Monster Squad's cult following was really becoming obvious. Further home video releases and a lot more revival screenings have followed since then, so the following is still continuing to grow. In 2018, Andre Gower directed a documentary named after the film's most iconic line,
Wolfman's got Nards,
as a way to turn the spotlight back around on the film's fans and explore their love for this film that at first appeared to be a failure, but has become an enduring classic. Universal truly would have been lucky to have The Monster Squad as an official entry in their Monsters franchise and might have been able to market it to success in 1987. Even though the movie ended up being released by different companies, it's worthy of being counted among the Universal Monster classics, as it's an incredible tribute to those films. It brings great versions of all the most popular monsters together in one story and puts them all on screen together, something that Universal didn't even accomplish in their days of making Monster Mash movies. Duncan Regier, who stayed in character while he was on set, plays one of the most evil and intimidating Draculas of all time, threatening a 5-year-old girl, tossing dynamite into a treehouse he thinks has a bunch of kids in it, and plotting the apocalypse. The runner-up for the Dracula role was Liam Neeson, who is said to have given a brilliant audition, but they went with Regier because he was more terrifying. It was the right choice, as his Dracula would rank up there among the best of them, if only more people had seen the movie he's in. Another actor who stayed in character was Tom Noonan, who gives a very touching and endearing performance as Frankenstein's monster. This soft-hearted fellow isn't into the evil plans his master Dracula tries to force him to participate in, and when he's sent to retrieve Van Helsing's journal from the Monster Squad, he befriends the kids and stays with them. He has a particularly strong bond with little Phoebe, and many Monster Squad fans have shed tears over the final moments Phoebe and Frankenstein's monster have with each other. The actors who play the Monster Squad members never met Tom Noonan while they were making the movie with him. He was so dedicated to not breaking character that they only met and worked with Frankenstein's monster. We got a shambling, bandage-wrapped mummy along the lines of the Cariste mummy Tom Tyler and Lon Chaney Jr. played in the Mummy sequels, and the Gill-Man gets a couple of moments to shine. There are some terrific moments involving the Wolfman, not just the one where Horace is shocked to find that kicking him in the Nards is an effective method of defense. When the Wolfman is in human form, he is desperate to be stopped. He's even credited as the Desperate Man. John Greaves gives an intense performance as this man who wants to be locked up or killed before he can wolf out again. The scene where he calls Del to warn him that Dracula is going to kill his son is really chilling.
No, don't hang up! He's gonna kill your son!
Opposite all those cool monsters, we get some of the best child characters to ever appear in a movie, characters that a lot of horror fans can relate to. If you had the opportunity and inclination to watch horror movies at a young age, chances are you were a lot like Monster Squad kids. Obsessed with monsters, always talking about creatures and horror with friends, and excited to check out the latest genre release. What's also great about these kids is when they find out there are monsters carrying out an evil plot to their town, they take it upon themselves to save the world and dive right into a plan to thwart the monsters. Although The Monster Squad is a movie for monster kids of all ages, Dekker didn't feel the need to blunt the edges or pander to any age group. There are dark and scary scenes, moments of violence, monsters are a serious threat, and Dracula calls a little girl a bitch. The scenes with the kids are so well written that even viewers old enough to be their parents or grandparents could still enjoy them. If you love the classic monsters, you'll love this movie, and if you're just getting started watching horror, The Monster Squad is definitely a great gateway movie. With a running time of 82 minutes, this film moves through its story at the speed of a silver bullet, and much of the second half is packed with action. The kids know they have to get their hands on the amulet and perform a ritual involving German lines spoken by a female virgin, which will open an evil-swallowing vortex, much like the one at the end of Evil Dead 2. As they prepare to carry out its plan, we get a wonderfully 80s montage set to the sounds of a song that's about dancing until your heart stops and your feet fall off. It's silly, but it's also perfect, and it's a lot of fun to see things like Rudy making wooden stakes and silver bullets in shop class while we listen to this goofball tune. Dekker thinks the song is awful, but it's not likely that many fans of the movie would want to trade it for anything else. Some of the best scenes in the movie involve Frankenstein's monster and the bond he forms with the Monster Squad. He has a memorable introduction to the boys who run in fear while Phoebe stands there holding his hand. Though they run and hide in that scene, the members of the Monster Squad do better handling future encounters with the monsters. Even the unlikely Horace gets multiple chances to be a hero, and in the end looks like a badass in front of the bullies who were picking on him earlier. The Mummy gets a good scene where he sneaks into Eugene's house and becomes the actual monster in the closet, and a Wolfman scene that's even better than when he gets kicked in the Nards is when we find out what would happen if a creature that can only be killed with a silver bullet were going to be blown up with dynamite. What happens is awesome. Fred Dekker has a difficult relationship with the Monster Squad because its box office failure sort of killed his career for a while, but then decades later, he found out it's actually the most popular movie he's ever made. In the Wolfman's Got Nards documentary, he says, "I think it's my best movie. I think it's reached the widest audience of anything that I've done as a director. I think it's probably going to be on my gravestone, and I'm ambivalent about that. The analogy I make is, you do a piano concerto in front of an audience and a couple of people applaud and then they leave. And then 20 years later, somebody comes up to you in the street and goes, I saw that piano concerto you did. It was incredible. There's such a disconnect from what you did to the response that is really hard to codify emotionally. It's like shooting a basket in 1987 and then it doesn't go in until 2006. That's weird and that's really hard for me to kind of make sense of. I don't mean to downplay it. I just have a very personal relationship with it because I put my heart and soul into it and nobody noticed for 20 years. Hopefully Dekker is able to take some solace from the fact that people do appreciate his work today. Better late than never in a sort of way, but it's not true nobody noticed how good the Monster Squad was until 20 years later. A lot of fans had already noticed by the end of the 80s. It just took 20 years until Dekker realized it had such a large cult following, and that following is growing every day. Before we wrap up here, I'd like to pay tribute to the Monster Squad stars we've lost over the years, including Jack Willem, who played Van Helsing and passed away in 2001, scary German guy himself, Leonardo Cimino, who passed away in 2012, Mary Ellen Trainor, who played Sean's mother, passed away in 2015, and squad member Horace Brent Shalem, who tragically passed away in 1997 at the age of just 22. We send our heartfelt condolences out to their family, friends, and fans, and thank them to their contributions to the greatness that is the Monster Squad.
What did you think of the Monster Squad? And did you see it before or after seeing the Goonies? And at what age do you think it's appropriate to introduce a child to? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.